Futures trading involves risk and is not suitable for all investors. Content provided in this segment is meant for educational purposes and is not a solicitation to buy or sell commodities.
Hi, this is Steve from Fresh Agenda, part of the Everegg Insights Global Insights team, here with the weekly take by myself this week. I'm coming to you from a Paris hotel room, Tuesday night, local time. Joanne, who's usually with me on these calls, obviously, is a speaker at the IDF World Dairy Summit, which is underway. She's over at a welcome function in the Louvre, appreciating fine art, and I'm here to tell you what's going on in the marketplace. So let's quickly look at a few market updates. Firstly, to Europe and the butter market. Not a lot of change in the past week in terms of futures. Certainly spot trades are weakening as time goes, but things seem to be fairly steady for a little bit. Certainly the forward curve has weakened out into Q2 and Q3 next year. But some other changes. There's a little bit more pressure on milk. Spot prices went up in the past week. We certainly see evidence of buyers pushing back. So a little bit of a hiatus. Cream market hasn't crashed. It's still staying well up above normal. So that's probably mean there's not a lot of butter being made at these falling prices. Over in the US, the futures curve has certainly fallen, and spot prices have also kept plummeting as the market adjusts to better expectations for the buy side. Watch for a rebound here, because the likelihood of stronger demand to meet festive requirements is that's coming, but also word is retailers are loading up for some heavy promotional activity. So we may see that line and those spot prices or near-term prices improve. Certainly some heavier trade in spot, and there might be a few people taking advantage of the dip in prices for what is to come. Moving to skim milk powder, really not a lot of change here. We're still seeing prices drifting weaker. This is the EU futures profile. New Zealand, similar, little small increase in New Zealand, but I'll skip over those. And I'm going to go to cheese, which is pretty interesting right now because of the changes in the European market and what's also recently happened in the US. So I showed you this a couple of weeks ago, and certainly been an update on this, that the EU mozzarella has weakened with the decline in the fat market. Now, in reality, EU mozzarella is a bit weaker than what this chart suggests. This is last week's index, the EEX index, put into US dollars. So that reflects quotes of around 44 to 4,500 euros per tonne. GDT was a bit weaker than this, and I'll come to that. But what we've been doing in the background over time has been studying what's driven the fundamentals of the EU cheese market. And this is something our senior analyst Vuko has pulled out, which is essentially a regression analysis showing what drives the value of mozzarella. And you can see mozzarella is very tied to the skim butter returns. There's around a 90% correlation, sometimes better, and certainly better in recent years. That's the driver of that value. And if we then look at going forward and what that might tell us about the differential between the US and EU cheese markets. So the dark line is that mozzarella projected fundamental value stretched forward based on where futures are in Europe for skim and butter, showing that the differential that appeared large in spot terms is declining, and really those mozzarella values will continue to fall and the gap between US and EU prices shrink. I'll put these into cents per pound, US dollars per pound, and that brings it back to around about a 10 cent per pound differential. So that won't be enough to win export business for the US from here, given that trajectory, and it's hard to see what will unseat that trajectory. In addition to that, we've heard recently, I was in Singapore last week at the NZX event, New Zealand will be out there looking for more cheese market activity as well. They're going to be producing 40 to 50,000 tonnes more cheese over this season, just to weigh into the competition, given their interests in reducing their exposure to milk powders. So cheese hotting up, it's going to remain a tight contest. EU production now, and this came out yesterday. Overall, it shows that EU milk in August was down 1.4%. However, Germany reported a very large decline of 5.4%. Netherlands down 3.9%, some heavy falls there. Both those countries obviously feeling the heavy pressure of disease, blue tongue disease right now. numbers still spreading, but at a lower pace than what they were. Now, just to cast back, we've used the weekly data from time to time, and we certainly report on that very frequently through our publications. But the weekly data suggested Germany was down 1.9% in August over that period. Now, that might mean there's a revision coming. It might mean that the imports of milk from Poland, for one, were heavy to keep these weekly numbers looking better, because the weeklies include plant collections, and we believe the official data is farm production. So it could be a bit of cross-border traffic there. It could be a revision, just wait and see, but certainly a heavy decline underway. What also came out was EU product output. No real change in the themes here. A bit of a stronger decline in butter, which is no surprise given how high the cream prices have been. Cheese still taking milk away there, and we see the powders obviously falling heavily. Now to GDT, a colourful event. When you look at the overall result, it's down 0.4%, which covers a few things, and digging into the detail, there's a bit more than meets the eye. The butter and AMF results there on that screen are overall trade, whereas the whole milk powder and skim are the major lines. In the butter result, that looks like a strong increase. Essentially what happened was a change in the mix of what was offered across contracts from European suppliers. Really, the butter and AMF markets rose a little for New Zealand product. So the tangle caused by European product coming and going from certain contracts made the individual contract averages look a lot better. I think the other thing to point out there is we've got a bit of a mix in the skim results as well, but let's dig into the detail. Demand was down for the major powders, skim a little bit more disappointing, and we saw a heavier fall. Butter demand not too bad. AMF was good, and that's encouraging, I'm sure, for New Zealand producers. The whole milk powder market hardly changed, but there was some good news and some fairly positive details in who bought what. So whole milk powder sales to China stayed up. We've now had 5 events where the average has been around about 10,000 tonnes. This is the highest so far this year, the highest in 14 months when you're looking back across our history. So with reducing production in China of ingredients because of slowing milk consumption, slowing milk production, and improving processing of liquid milk, we are seeing the gap emerge where they need to restock. So that's, again, are they back? Not across the board. Certainly China bought more across and was more involved across commodities this time. But still, it's a watch and see. But this is more encouraging than what we've seen. The Middle East also came at reasonable levels. Not quite what we've seen in the past 2 events, but prices up there historically high for them. But the volumes are encouraging. Looking at skim milk powder, down across the curve, but not not too far down, obviously. The involvement of China and Southeast Asia again. China holding volumes up, not quite to where we've seen a couple of events ago, but that was an increase in their participation in percentage terms. Southeast Asia, to be contrarian, they actually dipped. So a bit of a roller coaster pattern there, and we saw that continue this week with some a big dip in the volumes. AMF, this is a very boring chart, but probably very pleasing to the major supplier, where there's very little change at these high prices with the European market falling. We're seeing this global situation, the global demand for AMF staying fairly solid with volumes where they are, which is above where we've been in the past, obviously. So this is a very positive part of the outcome, I'm sure, for New Zealand producers. Skipping ahead to what's this mean in terms of price comparisons, that wide gap between skim milk powder prices is continuing, and GDT obviously well below where we see New Zealand futures, and the EX market also dipping with poor demand signals. Going across to butter, not a lot of change in this chart. CME futures, the US still the cheapest source of butter in the world. Not that will make a big deal of difference in exports. GDT value is very close to futures, but that differential with the EU has come back a bit. And to round out this one on cheese, I put up before the trajectory for mozzarella values. Now, interestingly, at this event, the mozzarella prices fell heavily, and in US dollar terms, not euros, this is US dollar terms, we've gone down to 4,600 is the average of the Danish and Belgian product there. Now, you recall I put this chart up earlier, which started the projection at around 4,700. Well, we're already past that. We're already down to a value below that. So, as expected, we should see this continue to drift weaker based on fundamentals, with the butter market dipping and with the cheese market now being fairly cautious, producers fairly cautious about what they're producing. We expect this falling knife situation to continue. That's a wrap for me. There will be no chart of the week this week. It's just not the same without Joe here, so we won't try to make up for that. We won't be back next week. There will be a gap. We are traveling, and this was more difficult than meets the eye to actually get this one to work. So next week we won't even attempt it, being in transit on the way back to Australia. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching.